West Cork Beard Company make beard oil and beard balm for a strong, healthy, great-looking beard. Handmade from all natural ingredients in Clonakilty, West Cork. Check out their YouTube channel for beard care tips and advice, or catch them online at westcorkbeardcompany.ie.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to the Same Old Arsenal podcast, episode I Don't Know. Obviously, most of you know by now that unfortunately last week we lost a very good friend. We lost a very good Arsenal supporter, and we lost a very good man. Unfortunately, Claude passed away last week. And we've lost him. Obviously, it's very, very, very sad with what's happened. Unfortunately, me and Claude didn't see eye to eye in the end, but I'm pretty sure he knew that it didn't mean anything. It didn't take away my respect for him. It didn't take away my love for him. I met him a couple of times. We always had good chats. It was just a bit of social media ridiculous, bit nonsense, really. But I'm sure he knows that I didn't hold any grudge over it. I told him that. And I've been told that he didn't hold any grudge over what happened either. So, yeah. So, obviously, this is just a little tribute to Claude. Condolences to his friends, his family, obviously, all his friends, and anyone who's... was lucky enough to meet him. He wore his heart on his sleeve, and no one can deny his love for this football club. Dan, do you want to say a few words?
Devastating. Last week was horrible for me. I was a dear friend of Claude's and spoke to him probably every other day, maybe every 2 days. He'd voice note me after every game. He'd text me after every podcast. Massive, massive fan of this show, by the way. Massive, massive fan of this podcast. Was always in the chat, was always messaging me afterwards. Judges is flip-flopping or whatever he'd comment. He'd always have a laugh. And that was what Claude was. And for the 8 or 9 years that he was on Arsenal Fan TV, he made AFTV for me. Without him, I don't think that anybody would have been able to appreciate that you can be as real and as honest as you want to be on any podcast or any platform or any channel. But unfortunately, what comes with that sometimes is a kind of fame, unfortunately, that some people either get jealous of or want to target. Claude wasn't a well man. I think he's quite open in saying that he had some issues. And unfortunately, there were people that preyed on that. And I think we need to learn from this that although it was natural causes, his death, he didn't deserve the abuse that he received, in my opinion. He did get a lot of it. And 1 or 2 followers didn't mean anything to Claude. He would still react. And I just want to try and allow people to be kind and learn from this and understand that if there's something you want to say that you think might get a reaction or might be unkind, then please just don't say it, because I really would urge you not to do that on Twitter and social media. I think something needs to be done about that with the authorities, not just with footballers, but in general. And I'm sure that in the next, say, 2 to 5 years, things will change on that. In terms of Claude, I've lost a friend. We've lost an Arsenal fan and an Arsenal legend as far as I'm concerned in terms of podcast channels, AFTV. But the thing about Claude is everybody is quick to bring up the stuff that went wrong in his life. And I would like to bring the stuff up that went great in his life. And I think that in the 8 years of passion and hilarious humor that he showed on AFTV, we should remember that and not the stuff that was perhaps looked at him as a negative light in the recent incident at Tottenham, in the stuff that goes on social media. Let's look at what he was as a person. He was a man who was passionate about life and was a man who was passionate about Arsenal Football Club. And at the end of the day, that is what we as Arsenal fans should love and want and cherish, because we all want Arsenal Football Club to do well. We all want Arsenal Football Club to win. And Claude was no different to that. Claude was a passionate man, and he was a very, very caring man. And the last thing I'll say, Craig, before we move to Harry and Graham, is this: he was so loving and caring towards me. It was so overwhelming. I'm a nobody. Yeah. Claude's a massive, massive figure when it comes to Arsenal. And he would be so respectful of me coming on his channel. Are you sure it's okay if you come on? I said, Claude, you're the star here, mate. I'm not. You're the star. I'll come onto your channel. This will be an absolute pleasure for me, not a pleasure for you having me on. He was so respectful. It wouldn't bother him if you had 5 million followers or 5 followers. He would welcome you as an Arsenal fan. He would welcome you onto his channel. He'd listen to you. He'd respect you. And he would promote everybody's channel as Arsenal, because that was what he was. He was a loving, kind, caring person. And I want to see people remember him for that, because that for me is what Claude is all about. And I'm going to miss him, and I loved him very much. So,
yeah,
thank you, Craig.
Very nice. Very, very nice, Dan. Thank you very much indeed, mate. Harry, it's very important. One thing I think is very important to a lot of Arsenal fans out there is that Claude was, I'm not saying that any of them are, but Claude supported Arsenal a long, long, long time before Arsenal Fan TV was about. You know, a message to those people that think Claude is a manufactured character.
Yeah,
no way was this man, you know, he was Arsenal through to his bone. And I'm very sad to lose him.
Yeah, of course, 100%. You know, I agree with Dan in terms of AFTV. Claude was the person that brought it to my attention, really. Claude was the person that I would look out for. When I first started podcasting, and I had a podcast with about 10 listeners an episode, Claude was always kind enough to give up time and come on there. You know, and I will always be appreciative to Claude for that. He always backed me in what I was doing. I remember on the show a few weeks back when he said that I must be on Arteta's or on Arsenal's payroll, and at the time I said I'd love to know, Claude, what you think it is that I get from the club. But it was, you know, but that was just Claude in a nutshell, you know, and people need to. It's not personal, you know. It's a passion for the club that spilt over at times, like it does with all of us. And Dan's absolutely right. There's so many, you know, there's so many great memories of Claude. I met him on, you know, 6, 7, maybe 8 occasions, and he was always an absolute gentleman who cared deeply about the football club. And when the news came through to me, I was gutted, and my condolences to his family and his friends. And I'm not going to, you know, Dan was very close with him. I know Graham was close with him as well. I knew Claude, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we were like best mates, because I hate when people do that just because somebody's passed away. I think that would be more disrespectful. So I want to pay my respects. Lovely man. Great opinions on the club. Even if I didn't agree with all of them, I respected them. And he'll be sorely missed.
You will. Graham?
Yeah, look, I just want to say those lovely words there from Harry and from Dan. I think the first I heard about it last week was because I spoke to him over the weekend. Was my son was at college and messaged me and said about Claude, and I couldn't believe it. You know, I was absolutely stunned. And the one thing I'll say is about Claude is that I went on AFTV, right, to talk to and engage with passionate Arsenal fans. I didn't go on there for fame and fortune, and there wasn't a more passionate Arsenal fan than Claude. And I think the thing is, we became firm friends. I wouldn't say that when I say firm friends through AFTV, I never obviously socialised with him, but we always talked around the ground. I always used to see him outside the away supporters club. I always used to meet him around the ground. I've seen him in the concourse at half time. And he was incredibly good to me. And the last words he said to me meant a lot to me, because he was saying to me, you need to get back on AFTV and use your talent. So even though he wasn't on AFTV, he always encouraged me. He had no ego. He was the biggest star on AFTV. Robbie Lyle will tell you that Claude made AFTV. There would be no AFTV without Claude. And the first thing I remember seeing him, the first time I remember seeing him was I can remember I was walking to the stadium with my son, and Claude was walking down the road towards the ground, and he literally had 30, 40 people hanging on to his coattails, listening to what he said. And he had time for everybody. He would always sort of like have a photograph taken. If somebody asked for his photograph, he was a really nice man. There was no ego about this man. He was a very humble, kind, genuine man. And I think a lot of the things that have been said about him over the last year disappointed me, because that was not the Claude. That definitely wasn't Claude. And I think I put out a tweet last week on Twitter. Why do people have to wait till someone dies till they say something nice and kind about someone? We should be saying nice, kind things about people when they're alive. Now, the one thing I'll say about Claude is that me and him were the same age, right? I'm a year older than Claude. And so my memories of Claude will always be about talking about the early Arsenal that we knew, because we both started going to Arsenal around the same time. I started going in 1971. My dad used to take me, and that was the year we won the double. I was at Wembley when Charlie George scored the winner, and Claude started going the following year. And we always talked about it because this year was the 50th anniversary. We come up for the 50th anniversary of that double winning team, and so we were talking about that. So you know, he loved Bob Wilson. Bob Wilson was his goalkeeper. He always used to talk fittingly about Bob Wilson. You're a goalkeeper, Craig. Bob Wilson was sort of like so brave the way he used to dive at forwards' feet. And he loved that about Bob Wilson. He loved talking about the old Arsenal. And also he loved Rocky Roadcastle. And his passion for the club, he cared so much about the club. He wore his heart on his sleeve. But the thing I'll say about him is, even though he was the biggest star on AFTV, he was incredibly encouraging to me. He always had time for me. I've got some great memories of him. I'm going to miss him greatly. As I say, I like Harry. I'm not going to say that we were massively close. I met him through AFTV, and I met him around the ground every week because of AFTV, and we talked quite a lot. And I had a conversation with him over the weekend when he got a bit of abuse on social media, and I told him to leave it alone. The last things he said to me was so nice, and I remember him as a really genuine, kind, humble man, a passionate Arsenal fan. And I'm privileged to have known him, and I'm going to miss him greatly. So that's it, mate.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to leave a massive hole in the Arsenal social media world, I suppose, and you know, and fan channel, and not just Arsenal fan TV. He was on lots of different ones, you know. Yeah, it's very sad. I don't know what else more to say. Really, it's gutting. It really is gutting to lose him. So, Claude, if you can hear us, rest in peace, mate. And I hope wherever you are, that you're now happy and free. Just before we move on, this one comes in from Cliff. Thank you, Cliff, for that. He says, "Well said, lads. Never ever met him, but like so many of us that watched and listened to him, I love the geezer. Rest in peace, you absolute legend." Okay, lads. Got a game of football to talk about. Unfortunately, I would have quite happily ended the podcast there, to be honest. Liverpool at the weekend, a game that I was looking forward to all bloody week, a game that I thought we could win, a game that I was really excited about, and of course, they go and let me down, and they go and let you down, and you know, they go and let everyone else down. Before we start, hello to everyone in the chat. Thanks very much for your kind messages in there. Like I said, there's loads of messages in there for Claude. You know, massive personality. To you all, good evening to you all if you're watching on YouTube on the catch up, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning to you if you are listening to us on the audio. Dan, Mikel Arteta visibly furious after the Liverpool game. I'm going to start with what Gary Neville said on Sky Sports. I don't know if you've seen the interview. He said it's either him or them. What's happening, mate? Are you muted?
Apologies,
There
I
you
wasn't
go.
muted.
No worries, mate.
I watched the same. I watched the same interview about an hour ago with Gary Neville and Carragher, and I thought it was spot on. And Gary Neville said, didn't he, that he's only really stayed behind a few times after games, being alarmed, speaking to Martin Tyler, and this was one of them, because he said he's so alarmed by what he's seeing going on at Arsenal at the moment. And he was basically, in a nutshell, saying similar to what happened with Unai Emery, that the players were down in tools on the manager and not really interested in playing for him. If he's right, That's extremely worrying because we've already seen last time that you can't get rid of 25 players. You have to get rid of the manager. So that is worrying for me. I'm not a huge fan of this manager, and I do believe that he's not the right man for the job. I've made that quite clear since October, November time. And nothing's made me change my mind on that. Saturday's game is worrying all round. It's the board and owners, however, that I'm going to go in harder on than anyone today and tonight. Because for as much as we have a bit of banter on here with me and Harry talking about Granit Xhaka, and as much as you might like Mikel Arteta or hate Mikel Arteta, I think this runs further than this now. Because I want to ask the question of, how am I supposed to trust a process that board members and owners of Arsenal Football Club have destroyed in the last 16 years? So why would I want to trust those individuals that have messed things up for 16 years just because they've given two novices the job that previously played for Arsenal? If they think that's the answer of making everything go away that is bad within the club and that's rotten to the core, then I'm going to be asking questions. Because if this is a process, what I'm seeing on Saturday, I'm tapping out. I've seen enough. I have seen too many of those performances this season, whether it's against Villa or Wolves or Burnley at home, or whether it's against Manchester City or Liverpool at home, which was boring, negative, and fearful. That is what it was. Let's take nothing away from Liverpool, by the way, because I thought Fabinho was world-class in that position, and they've missed him in that position. But also, they made the right substitution in bringing Jota on. What did our manager do? He brought on El Neni, right? Now, you bring on El Neni if you want to, because I thought Ceballos was absolutely woeful, but bring on somebody else to create. Our first creative midfielder came on, or creative substitute came on the 76th minute when we were 2-0 down in Martinelli. So change something, do something. It's not working. Do something different. Yeah. I can't stand Willian. Absolutely hate him. I expected to see him because we needed something to change. Whether it's Nelson, whether it's Willian, whether it's whoever you love or hate on that bench, bring somebody on that is not just Mohamed El Neni, because it is a like-for-like substitution that wasn't working. That front six yesterday for Arsenal were a disgrace. Absolute disgrace. I include Thomas Partey in that. I include Ceballos in that. And I include that top front three that is the most expensive in the Premier League. Costs more than Man City and Liverpool's front three. And they did nothing. If I was late for a game, the first thing that I would want to do the next game is play my socks off to realize to that manager that I have learnt my lesson and I won't be late again, but trust me, you won't be dropping me again because I'm the best player on that pitch. I've seen two of the worst performances from our captain against Liverpool and West Ham, and he's got subbed in both. What's happening to him? I've seen Lacazette and Pepe disinterested. There's no style here. There's no style of play. Either it's the manager or if it's the players. But what I will say, there's a section of this fan base that believes that when we win, the manager's a genius. When we lose, it's the players. Players aren't good enough. That doesn't make any sense. You need to start looking at where we are as a whole. And at the moment, this manager, whether you love him, hate him, or don't think he's good enough, or just think he's average, is not getting the best out of this group of players. And for all the Xhakas and Bellerins and Luizes that I don't like in this team, there are players that are good enough and better than 10th place. And this is not just a knee-jerk reaction, the Liverpool result. This is a result since October in my eyes. My eyes have not lied to me. I have not seen a progress. I have not seen improvement. And for every North London derby win, there's always a Burnley result or a West Ham result or a Villa at home result. And Liverpool are a good side. Don't take anything away from them. But they were there for the taking. They had two 19-year-olds at the back that have hardly kicked a ball in a Liverpool shirt, and we didn't even look like threatening them once. It was poor tactically from Mikel Arteta, and I don't think that any Arsenal fan can sit there and say otherwise, that the manager doesn't deserve to take some blame at least for this game. And the last thing I'll say, Craig, before we move on, I have been trusting this process for 16 years, like I said, and I don't want to trust it much longer. My fear is we're going to have this for another couple of seasons, so I think we're going to have to buckle up, because this is going to be a long ride. We could lose the rest of our games this season and go out of the Europa League, and Mikel Arteta will be the manager come the first game of next season. So we're stuck with him.
Harry, I'll come to you there now. Thanks, Pids, for this kind donation. Going back to what we were saying, if you can't be kind, don't say anything at all. Absolutely correct. And I echo that statement 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Harry, what Dan says there is completely correct. Me and you have stood here or sat here on this podcast and we've defended him. Mostly every week. But even after that result on Saturday, I'm now starting to say, God, he's making it very, very hard for me to keep coming up with reasons on why he should be our manager and why we should be giving him a chance. Because Dan's right. It's going down the toilet, and it's going down the toilet fairly quickly. There's fans out there saying now that if we get knocked out of the Europa League, then that's it. He should be sacked. Now, I don't think he will be sacked. I think the club are going to hang on to him, and I think Dan's right in saying that he'll be here next year, whether we get knocked out of the Europa League or not. But what's your take on it, Harry? What's your feeling? I know we've got Dan there that brings his passion about why it's not working, and we've got you here that brings the passion on why he is the man to take us forward. And go ahead, mate.
You're not going to be surprised to hear that I respectfully disagree with you both on this. And the reason I disagree with you both on this is because the first point I want to make is, why is everybody so stunned that we got beaten by a team who finished 43 points ahead of us last season?
I don't think we're stunned. I don't think we're stunned that we lost to Liverpool. I am stunned at the performance. That's what I'm stunned at.
But you're going to get that because Arsenal have been consistently inconsistent this season. And we knew that before we went into Saturday's game. I'm not excusing the performance. I thought the performance was terrible. I thought it was awful. I thought we got so many things wrong tactically, but do I think that all of those tactical mistakes were down to the manager setting it out wrong? Or do I think that the application of it was wrong? So I watched the game back 3 times for my sins because I was doing some work on it over the bank holiday weekend, and we sat and went through it. And one of the key things that I picked out, and I'm interested afterwards to know if Graham realised this as well, is that we kind of got caught between a rock and a hard place. Our front line were trying to press at times when Liverpool had the ball at the back, but it wasn't being followed up by the midfield, and it wasn't being followed up by the defensive line pushing up.
Yeah, spot on, Harry. Spot on.
And to press, you have to do it as a unit. Now, people will sit there and they'll call the shit out of Granit Xhaka, and they'll do the same with David Luiz. Those two are leaders, right? Whether they're good enough, I'll accept that there's a debate there. But what they do as leaders is they bring the team up. David Luiz does it a lot by just carrying the ball out of the defence. They bring the team up. And it felt as though, on the one hand, the forwards were trying to press the back line of Liverpool. And on the other hand, they weren't being followed up because there was a fear from the rest of the team about getting caught in behind. So I feel like maybe we overthought it a little bit. And the point I'm trying to make there is, yes, Mikel Arteta made some mistakes at the weekend, but would he have instructed his forward line to press and not the rest of his team? I don't buy that. I don't think so. When you look at sort of some of the individual performances, we've seen it time and time again, guys. We know, right, that when you look at that starting 11, when everybody's fit, we know there are certain players that Mikel Arteta picks every single week. Those players are Bernd Leno, David Luiz. Most of the time it's Gabriel at centre-back alongside him. We know that Partey plays. We know that Xhaka plays. We know Saka plays. We know Odegaard plays. We know Emile Smith-Rowe, when he's fit enough, even if he has to be shoehorned onto a flank, he will get a game. So for me, I thought that it wasn't surprising to see the likes of Nicolas Pepe, Rob Holding, Danny Ceballos, to name a few, who didn't perform to the required level because those players have been so hit and miss all season. Now, again, I'm not saying that Mikel Arteta got it right or that he was perfect or anything like that. I'm just saying that what I saw on Saturday came as absolutely no surprise to me. And it's an indictment of where we're at as a football club. And so, in my opinion, I think the reaction to this has been overblown. We got comprehensively beaten by a team that are much better than us. And I've seen people on Twitter, Liverpool lost to Fulham this year and they lost to this team. And this team still possess arguably one of the best front threes in Europe when they're on song, in Mane, Salah, Firmino. Trent Alexander-Arnold causes people problems all day long. Robertson does the same on the left-hand side. Dan said it himself. Fabinho was immense. The biggest disappointment and regret was that we didn't test that central defensive pairing, because we know, and we've seen it throughout the season, that they've been distinctly average for Liverpool. I understand, like in Dan's case, right, where he's had doubts for a while. I can accept the debate, and I can accept that there is obviously a concern on his part. What I can't accept is fans who were up Mikel Arteta's backside, if you like, after the North London derby, 2 weeks later, think that the world's ending. And you know, Dan says the process has been going on for 16 years. It hasn't, has it? Because Mikel Arteta hasn't been there for 16 years. Edu hasn't been there for 16 years. The club hasn't been solely owned by the Kroenkes for 16 years. So there's been a lot of change in that time. And I actually think a large part of the decline is that there's been too much of that change behind the scenes, off the pitch, in managerial positions. And I think that's a big problem. I can't accept Saturday's performance. As I say, I watched it back a few times and it's dreadful, it's woeful. But does it really change our season for me? No, it doesn't. We knew that our Premier League campaign was going to crash and burn. It has crashed and burned already months ago. It wasn't on Saturday. It's all on the Europa League now. And Mikel Arteta has an opportunity to buy himself some more time if he can go far in that competition. The biggest disappointment for me off the back of this weekend is not what happened, because losing to Liverpool isn't a disgrace. What the biggest disappointment for me is the news about David Luiz, because I'm really worried about how we're going to cope with his absence for all of the reasons I've just explained. Leadership. We don't have leaders as it is. We've got 2 or 3 in the group. And when you take one of the big ones out of there, and you saw what missing him and Xhaka did to us in terms of our shape, I thought it completely killed us.
Yeah, I mean, the injury news about David Luiz. What about the injury news about Kieran Tierney? To me, that's even bigger. If people are saying it might be an ACL. I don't think it is his ACL. From the way he walked off, but that's a bigger worry to me if Kieran Tierney's out for it.
That's a massive worry, but I'm not jumping to conclusions on that because we haven't had it.
Yeah, true. We
haven't been told he's going to be out for X, Y, Z, or he needs this, or even what the injury actually is. Yeah. So that's why I'm reserving.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I'm still bloody worried. Graham, another disappointing result for us. Another poor performance. What's your takes on it, mate?
I always knew there was going to be a day when I agree with Harry on this podcast. And what he said about the pressing was fundamentally right, and I will touch on that. I watched it like Harry. I watched it back today, knowing I was going to be coming on here tonight. So I just wanted to re-watch it again, because when you're watching it live, that's why I'd never do a watch along with anybody, because you're screaming at the telly and you're saying things, you're losing, you're swearing. I'm quite calm, but when I'm watching Arsenal, I'm stressed, and they are stressing me out at the moment. I think Harry is absolutely right. The one thing that is consistent at the moment is we are incredibly inconsistent. I said it on this podcast 2 weeks ago. I said it on Curtis Shaw TV. Until Mikel Arteta finds out a way to stop us being inconsistent, we will carry on being inconsistent. And I don't know the reason why we are, whether it's the players, whether they can't carry out his instructions. But there's no doubt about it. We can be brilliant one week and we can be poor the next. And we've hit some highs this year, but we've hit too many lows. And I think Dan's absolutely right in a lot of the things he says as well. But, summing up Saturday, it was not the defeat for me. It was the manner of the defeat. And whatever Arteta's plan was, it failed. It looked to me like a throwback to pre-lockdown when we were sitting deep and trying to hit teams in the break. But we didn't have the team or the players on Saturday night suited to carrying out that sort of game plan. There's just as well, there were no fans in the stadium for Arteta on Saturday, because they would not have put up with that. 100%. We would have been screaming at the team, and screaming at Arteta. He's incredibly lucky at the moment there's no fans in the stadium, because this football, and I agree with Dan, is dire. I've been watching Arsenal 50 years, and to have a game where we offered literally no goal threat, I can't ever remember that. And I've watched a lot of poor Arsenal teams. And this was on the day when we were honouring Rocky Rocastle, one of our legends. So what must he have thought looking down on that performance? I do think, despite what Dan thinks, I think, not Dan, sorry, Harry, that I think the injury to Kieran Tierney is a major blow to our Europa League hopes, because I don't think he's definitely not going to be fit for Thursday. I think he could be out like Louise for a number of weeks. And I think although Liverpool dominated this game throughout, it was noticeable that once Kieran Tierney went off, that they dominated even more in those wide areas. Trent and Salah exploited Tierney's absence second half, because as good as he is going forward, Tierney understands positioning in defence. And I know Harry's great at talking about the way Granit Xhaka fills in for him. He moves over when Tierney goes forward. But Tierney is incredibly good at sort of like coming into a three as well and defending those areas better. And I think Cedric didn't offer us that on Saturday night. The thing that alarmed me on Saturday, I could see it, was that we had no outball. It was as simple as that. There was no outball, and we were playing counter-attack. So I hate to say it, but I found myself actually wishing that Granit Xhaka was playing, because the one thing that Granit Xhaka does is he gets the ball and he releases it quickly, and he offers. I'm not saying I'm a massive Granit Xhaka fan. I do think we need to upgrade on Granit Xhaka, but I agree with Harry that I think Granit Xhaka would have offered us something in that game. I'm not saying we would have won the game, because I think Liverpool were dominating us anyway, but I think that Granit Xhaka would have done the simple things well that would have got us moving up the pitch. And it was noticeable on Saturday night that every time we played the ball forward, everybody was in our own half. I think only Odegaard had a pitch position where he was above the halfway line, so that told you everything. We were just totally dominated midfield by Fabinho and Thiago. I think, look, I'm not going to blame one individual, and we've touched on it, and I think Harry knows it, but Ceballos just simply wants too many touches in midfield, and he just can't play through the press. He's like not press resistant, and that left party really struggling to contain Fabinho and Thiago on his own. And I think the real interesting thing for me was, and I watched Mikel Arteta's interview after the game, where he didn't really want to blame the players that were missing, the likes of the Osakas, your Smith Rowes, your Xhakas, and your Louises. But I do think the fact that those players were not available to him might have changed the way we played that game. I think that he played £180 million worth of attacking talent on Saturday night. Pepe, Lacazette and Aubameyang. And he played them almost like a structure that was set for counter-attack. So I don't think that was ever going to work. But the one thing he had, if he had Saka and Smith Rowe in the team, he would have had players sort of like moving around and basically getting between the lines and offering us something going forward. I think Harry made a great point, and I agree with him 100%. We beat Liverpool at the Emirates last year by pressing them high. We pressed them into mistakes, but we rarely pressed on Saturday night. Odegaard did it a few times. I think there was a few presses. Harry's right. The front three or four were pressing, but the rest of the team were not. It was very disjointed pressing. So as a result, Liverpool were able to very quickly play around the press, get it into midfield, Thiago and to Fabinho, and they took it from there. I know you're a goalkeeper, Craig, and I don't know what your thoughts were, but I thought Leno was shot for the first two goals. I thought the other thing is we didn't close down that cross. Aubameyang was out there playing left back most nights when you want him further forward. Why we were playing Aubameyang like that, I'll never know. He didn't stop the cross from coming in, and it was a good cross. Holding gets lost, admittedly, and Jota gets a header in. He gets it on target, but I think Leno has to have stronger wrists there. And then the second goal, once Gabriel couldn't make the tackle, he was in a very difficult position the way he played Salah. Salah got away from him, was in on the box, but Leno didn't cover himself with the glory the way that went through his legs. So I blame Leno for those first two goals. And I'm a bit like Dan now. Every time I start to believe in Arteta and the team, we crumble. And I agree with Harry. His only get out of jail card now is to win that Europa League. If he wins that Europa League, that changes everything. That buys him time. And I think also it will enable him then to sort of replace some of these players. If we get back in the Champions League, we might have a bit of money to hit a few targets. If we don't, we're going to be stuck with the same old players next year. He's going to have to offer Lacazette a new contract, because we're not going to be able to get better than Lacazette if he wants to move Lacazette on. And I know he's been talking about offering him a new contract. But I agree with Dan. I've never seen a more uninspired, lacking in intensity, lacking any goal for it in any Arsenal team in 50 years of watching Arsenal. I do think Martinelli should have come on earlier. And if we were playing a counter-attack, as I said, Aubameyang should have gone central against one of their average centre-halves and run him around a bit. So in conclusion then, I think we lost all the duels, we lost all the second balls, we sat deep, we had no outball, and we got absolutely smashed, hammered out of sight by a very good Liverpool team. Well, you could say that we rebooted Liverpool now. They were struggling before this game. And much the same way as Southgate seemed to sort of like bring out the best in Trent Alexander-Arnold, the fact that we were so lethargic and sat off them has literally rebooted Liverpool. We did more for Liverpool in the last few weeks than Klopp has, I would say. So really, it was a very hard watch. And to be honest, we got absolutely hammered and we deserved it. And it's very worrying now going into this Europa League game this week.
It is very worrying indeed. Hard to disagree with anything you've said, Graham. Dan, a lot of people are saying, it's Europa League or bust. I find that a bit, I don't know, is that a bit harsh? I don't expect him to win the Europa League. I really don't. And I don't think, there's probably a few Arsenal fans out there that might say that we can win it.
We'll never have an easier chance to win it, Craig.
What's that, mate?
We'll never have an easier chance to win it than this year.
Yeah, but it's Arsenal. That's that's what marries me the most. That it's Arsenal. It will, going back to Baku, which was probably the worst performance after last week, to be honest. Going back to Baku, we all sat here and we were all excited about being in a European final, and then the players turn out a performance like they did. So I'm not too sure if that's right in saying that if he doesn't win the Europa League, he should get sacked. Dan, people are in the comments here at me now, obviously straight away. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get it out of the boys, trying to get it into conversation about, is that really a marker? If we get knocked out of the Champions League, he should be sacked straight out, just because he didn't win the Europa League.
I think, as Graham says, he will be rubbing his hands in that draw. Now, take nothing away from Slavia Prague, take nothing away from Villarreal Zagreb, great sides, but they're not better than Arsenal. He's got the easiest route to the final. And we are going to face, if we get there, a very, very tough opposition in either Manchester United, Roma or Ajax. However, I think this team, albeit with some terrible players in it, is good enough to at least get to that Europa League final. So if he doesn't get to that Europa League final, yes, I believe he deserves to be sacked, not just because of that competition, but because of all the domestic trophies that he's thrown away and the fact that we're currently sitting still on the same points as Leeds United, who have only just come up in 10th place. So yes, I do. Craig, we've played 15 home games. In 8 of those home games, we haven't scored a goal. That's not Arsenal. That is not Arsenal. I'm sorry, it's not. Since 2003, 18 years ago, we have had 3 shots or fewer in only 5 games in 18 years. 4 of those games are under Mikel Arteta. Goodbye. I'm sorry, this guy is not good
it's
enough.
Absolutely fine, mate.
I can't, and I know people disagree. That's fair enough. That's absolutely fine. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying what I feel is where we are at the moment. And
I'm not saying that you're wrong.
We're improving. Yeah. No, I know you're not.
He's making me question. He's actually making me question my loyalty to him now. I mean, there's people in the chat saying even if he wins the Europa League, he should be sacked. I mean,
can I ask you guys a question then?
Certainly.
If I'll ask you, Craig, if you're considering changing your loyalty towards him.
No, not at all. I'm not. I'll always stand by what I've said. Right, I'll defend him till the end of the season. I don't think he's going to be sacked. I don't think the Arsenal board will sack him because I don't think there's a manager that will come and manage. I don't think there's an elite manager that will come and manage Arsenal without a war chest, because it's so clear that we need a war chest to get us any bit back up to where we want to be.
So then, doesn't that say that the state of the squad is terrible? And all right, I'll put the question to Dan. What would, if you were in charge on Saturday, what would you, and everybody's talking about the tactics being wrong and all of that. I don't for a second believe that Mikel Arteta turned up on Saturday ripped up the blueprint that he's been putting together since Christmas, where we actually have played better than we were previously. Let's make no mistake about it. Our Premier League campaign died before Christmas. So let's look at what he did on Saturday with the players that were available to him. Dan, what would you have done from the outset differently that you think would have made a difference to the outcome of the result?
Show some fight. Get those
players.
But
hold on. But that's the
players.
That's the players.
No, it's not, Harry. No, it's not. No, it's not. So the players have to go out there and want it, correct? If they don't, it is up to that manager to get those players up for the game. Yeah, it is up for the manager to show them players that they should be showing intensity. It's Liverpool at home. This is supposed to be a big game, by the way. They've gone out there, they're swanning round, and then they came out in the second half and swanned around even more. So whatever he said at half time didn't affect those players one bit, in my opinion. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking,
can I come in, Craig?
You certainly can, mate.
Go on, Graham.
Right. Harry says, what would I have done differently? Right. So, and Harry, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, because you're like the professional pundit here now. Right. So, reason, over the last few,
he's the Jermaine Jennings of us.
Harry,
if I'm Jermaine Genius, then Dan's Paul Merson. Bloody hell.
Oh dear.
Right, let's try and think what I was going to say now. Right, Harry. The last few weeks he's been playing, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong. He hasn't been playing Aubameyang and Lacazette together, has he? Mainly, he's been playing one central striker and three creators behind a central striker. So that's the first thing he's been doing. He's been playing like three number 8s, or two number 8s and a number 10. It depends what you want to call it. But he's been playing this very fluid system where he's played like Lacazette or Aubameyang up front. And I think that the team has evolved away from Aubameyang the last 3 weeks, the way that Lacazette's been playing in that role. But he hasn't played Lacazette and Aubameyang together, but he's played like, if you say one central striker, Odegaard, and then Saka and Smith Rowe, and that's like giving us more structure and fluidity in movement, right, when we get the ball forward. Now, he went back on Saturday night to playing Lacazette and Aubameyang together. And he also brought Pepe in the team. I think he only plays Pepe in the team now when Saka's not available. So that's just my view. But so that's the first thing. So what's that?
Jesus Christ. The club must be paying his panelists. If they were paying me, do you think I'd be sitting in my bedroom?
So I think the big mistake he made, and I don't know what the tactics were because I couldn't work out. We went back to playing counter-attack, sitting behind the ball. We did that against them in the Community Shield early in the season. And luckily for us, we scored a goal, created one brilliant goal for Aubameyang, and then we literally sat on that goal for the whole game. They dominated, and they got a late equaliser, and we won it on penalties, right? So the system he played there with, if he wants to play counter-attack, you've got to have people. You can't play Lacazette and Aubameyang. You play also two runners, and you play an extra person in midfield. So I think that's what I can understand. It looked disjointed. Whatever he was planning just didn't make sense. So go on.
I agree with that point. I wrote a few articles about it this week, last week, and I got loads of abuse about it. But I said that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang does not fit in this system right now. Mikel Arteta is shoehorning him in on the left.
Can I ask you, Harry? Sorry, I need to come in. What is the system? What is the system that you see?
So what Graham just explained. So the two-man midfield pivot, which is Xhaka and Partey, where you need, in my opinion, to play a 4-2-3-1 correctly, you need one defensive midfield player or deeper lying one, and that one is Granit Xhaka, who gets the ball off of the back four. And then you need a box-to-box player, which is Thomas Partey, who's got a bit more license to get about the pitch, knowing that structural stability is there because Xhaka's not really going to veer too far away from his position. Then ahead of them, you need a number 10. And then what he's been doing is, as Graham said, he's been going with the more technical players who are going to be able to come inside with the ball comfortably, create the space for the fullbacks to bomb on. And that's what he's been trying to do. He doesn't trust Aubameyang's centre forward play. He doesn't trust him to hold the ball up. He doesn't trust him to press people, and he doesn't trust him to combine. And that is why he's not playing him at centre forward. And that's why he didn't play him at centre forward the other day. Maybe the fact that we were without Smith Rowe and Saka made him feel like that was the way to go. Another thing I'll say in Mikel Arteta's defence is going into this fixture, he had won 3 of the 4 meetings against Jurgen Klopp. So he would have...
Penalties.
But the point is, what he had done had worked against Liverpool. So if he was going to go into it, with that sort of view and with that idea, I don't think you could really knock it that much. My point is, I think he got it wrong in hindsight, but I don't think when the team came out, there were many of us looking at it going, oh, this is shocking. I think actually the application of all of it was crap. And that's the bottom line.
I absolutely disagree with that. When I saw that team, the first thing that struck me was that basically they play a 3-man midfield, players who basically who work hard, like Fabinho and Thiago. They play a 3-man midfield, and I immediately had worries about our midfield pivot right from the start because Ceballos does not understand structure. Ceballos wants too many touches on the ball, and if Partey's going to be playing box to box, I could not see how Ceballos would give us the structure defensively.
Right, but this is the point, Graham. With what was available at the weekend, and I agree with you.
You had to play on Nenny then, didn't he? You had to play on Nenny.
But then everybody would have been up in arms about El Neni because he's equally as bad, if not worse. So the point I'm trying to make is
he would have suited that structure. If he would have sat, wouldn't he? You could have asked him to sit. You needed someone to sit in front of the back 4. You couldn't have Partey playing box to box and then Ceballos sort of like moving around the way he was. There was gaping holes. It reminded me a bit of like, I know we sat behind the ball for long periods, but we looked disjointed. They were playing around our front 4 very easily, getting it into midfield. There was gaps to get at our back line. Ceballos was always out of position. And then once Tierney went off, literally Cedric was not positionally great either. And then suddenly they started exploiting our weaknesses. I just think the team setup was wrong. I do feel as though if he wanted to play counter-attack, he couldn't play Lacazette and Aubameyang in the same team. I think he should have played Martinelli as well and left out either Lacazette or Aubameyang. And if you say I would have played Aubameyang at centre forward. I wanted Aubameyang to be one-on-one with one of their centre halves. I think, if you wanted to sit back and play counter-attack, you needed to use Aubameyang and Pepe's pace in the counter-attack. But I wouldn't have played counter-attack. I would have played the way we played them at the Emirates before, where we pressed up high as a team and tried to force turnovers. That's what they did to us. They were forcing turnovers in our when we just kept giving the ball away. We just couldn't keep the ball. And they were forcing turnovers all the time. We should have been trying to do that to them. We should have been forcing them back. All the time we allowed them to get forward. It's amazing that Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, who've been struggling to deliver the same sort of like crosses and assists this season, were suddenly rejuvenated because they were allowed to get forward and be what they were. And I think that's why the tactics were wrong.
You're right, but this is the question here. This is the big question that decides who's to blame here, right? Do you actually? Because I don't think that Mikel Arteta set the team out to be as passive as they were. I think that we talked about a lot of those positions, and the problem is that we don't have like-for-like replacements. Xhaka is of a very different profile to Ceballos, and El Neni's a different profile as well. So there was no like-for-like to maintain the system we've been playing. For me, if you think that Mikel Arteta designed it to be that Arsenal were going to drop off the way they did, and it wasn't a case of Liverpool dominating us and overwhelming us and forcing us into that position,
okay, fair enough,
then I accept that Arteta's to blame. My issue is I don't believe that was the case.
I accept the point you're making, but when he saw what was happening, he had time to change it, didn't he?
Thank you.
To change that system. When they got to half time, that was a shocking first half performance. Liverpool dominated throughout, and Tierney's injury was a major blow. He should have then totally changed the system at half time. He needed to do something. Liverpool were just rampant. We came out second half for 5 minutes. We were slightly different, and I thought, well, maybe he's changed it. But then we just retreated into our shells again. And basically, they started dominating again. He did nothing to change that. He should have had Martinelli on quicker.
He brought on El
Hello,
Neni,
Lee.
Graham. That was what he did. That was what he changed.
Evening,
Sorry.
lads.
Right,
Evening.
go on, Lee.
Evening.
That's all right,
Hello,
mate.
Dad.
Lee,
Yeah,
mate, only
yeah.
50
You're
minutes
right.
late. Only
Yeah,
50
only 50
minutes late,
minutes
Lee.
late
That's good
tonight.
for you.
That's
That's good for
good
you,
for
Lee.
Sorry about that, lads. Sorry
No,
about
he's
that.
not late. He's not late. He had other prior engagements, and I saw him in the chat, so I saw that he must have been finished.
Yeah.
Toby
So
Rose. Everyone was
we'll
Toby
get him
Rose.
in. Lee, I know you've been watching it for a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
you know where we're up to. At the moment, Dan was saying that he doesn't trust the process. He can't see any style of play. Harry was saying that Aubameyang doesn't fit Arsenal's style of play. So I asked Harry. The last discussion we were having there was about what is the style of play at the moment at Arsenal, because I don't know if you were watching when I said that I'm actually starting to question myself now over the manager. What I saw at the weekend was probably the worst performance since Baku in the Europa League final. Probably one of the top worst performances I've ever seen from an Arsenal team. Graham said it's the worst performance he's seen in 50 years. Like, I can't. What worries me is what Lacazette said last week. It's still in my head what Lacazette said last week in his interview, that we didn't listen to the manager, right? And that's worrying. If they're not listening to the manager, then that means they're down in tools. And as Dan rightfully said, if the players are down in tools, the only man that can go is the manager, because we can't change 25 players. What is going on, Lee? Like last week, I think I'm not too sure what victory it was, but after one victory on this podcast, you were saying, that's it, I'm off the fence, I'm Arteta in. Where are you now? I mean, banter aside, you get called a flip-flop, but after that, I think you might have flip-flopped back. Sure,
Well, this is the trouble, and the facts remain. This is where my problem is, and I think it's a little bit to do with Arteta and his inexperience, and I also think it's down to the players. And let's be honest about it. I did say that after the last two performances against Tottenham. When the result against Tottenham. Since that game against Tottenham, we haven't won a game.
Yeah,
we haven't won a game. Coincidence that I thought it was a fantastic performance against Spurs. Aubameyang didn't play in that game. He's played in the next three. We've been poor as anything. I know we got the 3-3 against West Ham, but my God, in that first 20, 25 minutes, it was embarrassing. I think that there's a lot to be desired about the team, the players. Let's get some facts here first and foremost. Yeah. I've heard people turn around and say, we missed Granit Xhaka today or on Saturday or Sunday, Saturday night, and we missed David Luiz. There's your problem there, highlighted.
I know what you're going to say.
Right? Highlighted, because we did miss them. We did miss them. But they, to get to the standards that we want, they are squad players of title-winning teams. Not players that you rely on week in, week out. So I do think there is a lot to do with the players. Now, let's get the facts right about Saturday night. I don't care what anybody says about Liverpool, right? We was totally dominated from the first minute to the last minute to a poor Liverpool side compared to last season's standards. Nowhere near the team of last season. This is a team that's fifth in the league this season in a very, very poor league. Let's get that right. They totally dominated us from start to finish. I don't want to hear no excuses about Europe on a Thursday night. They play Real Madrid on Tuesday, with less time than us to recover, and they've got to travel to Spain. So I want no excuses about Europe or anything like that. Let's get it done. The manager's tactics for the game, I don't care what anybody says, was wrong. We set up with a midfield of 2 against 3. It didn't work. Now, it doesn't matter if you put El Neni in there or Ceballos in there. It doesn't matter. We actually brought El Neni on, and I've just heard Graham saying, I should have played El Neni. When he came on, the score was 0-0. When he came off the field at the end, it was 3-0. And Danny Ceballos had an absolute howler of a game. And I'm going to say it now. These players are not good enough. They're not good enough, right? We know that. But also, you have to look at the manager on this game. Yeah, there was a massive decision again on Saturday night. Do you continue to play Aubameyang, who's poor? Oh, yes, we will. But I'll tell you what we'll do. We're shoehorn him into a position which, when there's better options for us, i.e. Martinelli came on And if you're, I'm fed up now. I'm fed up with Mikel Arteta turning around and saying, I'm sorry for this poor performance. It's not the first time that this has been a poor performance. How many more times at home are we going to not going to score a goal? I don't know how many times it is now. It's got to be 5, 6 times, not let alone winning games. This is not scoring in games. Now, people turn around and go, oh, he hasn't got the players to do the high press. He hasn't got the players to do the press and whatever he wants to do, like Liverpool did on Saturday night. Oh, yes, he did. He had Martinelli to do that, and he chose to Aubameyang. So that then comes down to the manager. That comes down to the coach. That comes down to the way he sets up the team, because he sets it up and people then look at what's going on. Now, I don't care how many drills and how many videos I've seen of them scoring goals in training. I don't see it in a game. When are we creating all these chances in a game? We're not. The midfield was all wrong. Now, last season, Danny Ceballos and Granit Xhaka dominated Liverpool in a game at the Emirates last season. All right, dominated a game at the Emirates last season. People can turn around and say, oh, they'd already won the league. They was going for 100 points. There was a record at stake, and we dominated that midfield. So when you look at it today on Saturday night, is it down to the manager or the tactics or the players? The players are just not good enough. When you turn around and say, and this is including party who I've had arguments with on other podcasts about, right? Yeah, he's playing, and they say, "Oh, we've got to have El Neni aside." I've heard that conversation for 5 years with Granit Xhaka. The fact of the matter is, they're not good enough. And the fact of the matter is, when Granit Xhaka and Partey play together, it's half decent. That might dominate a midfield of 2, but that wasn't going to do it. All the goal. Can someone tell me what his role was in that game? You know what I mean? It wasn't there. And Graham's dead right at half time. Totally get dominated. What do? Change it around. Yeah, like for like. You know, I've had how many more times are we going to continue to change the back 4 around, right? Yeah, we've changed it around, chopped it around. Who has been the player that's played the most times in that game? David Luiz. Now we haven't got a clue who's going to replace him to the end of the season, because he's been playing 5, 6, 7 games. Chopping and changing, what for? To give players a rest or what? I don't understand it. You know, I then look at, Tierney is one of our leading lights at the end of the day, yeah? Right? And he gets injured in that game. And people are going, oh, should have got rested. Robinson played in that game. He plays in the Champions League in 2 days' time. So I don't go and played exactly the same minutes as he did for Scotland as Tierney did. I'm not having it. I'll tell you what I'm not having, and this is my beef about it all. I now went to bed on Saturday night, tucked myself in and didn't sleep, had a bad night's sleep. Do you know why? Because I'm used to Arsenal losing. I'm used to them getting stuffed on many occasions now. It doesn't hurt like it used to because it's normal, right? But I'll tell you what I don't. I can accept a defeat and I can accept losing in games of football. But when I look at it and sit there and think, do you know what? We've not had a go at them. We've not had a go. We've not even looked at. This isn't an elite Liverpool side. This was 2 centre halves that I don't even know. Did they get tested by Aubameyang, Lacazette, and Pepe? Now I'm going to tell you one thing, and one thing I can get. Pepe was a disgrace on Saturday night, as was Lacazette, as was Aubameyang, yeah? I am going to tell you this now, and I'll ask each and every one of that, even in the chat, right? You put your mortgage on one of those 3 to be dropped, I'll put every single penny on it that it will be Pepe. He will be the one to be dropped. Not Aubameyang, not Lacazette. I've heard people making excuses, gone out today, like sitting around here. Lacazette's not so good in the team without the 2 kids playing inside him, Saka and Smith Rowe. There's your problem. There is our problem at Arsenal Football Club at the moment. Forget about the others. When we didn't have those 2 players playing, Smith Rowe and Saka, Lacazette doesn't play, the whole thing goes out the window. Odegaard doesn't play because those players can pass little link-up play, little intricate 1-2s. We've got no one else to do that in the team. 19 and 20 years of age, right? And you've got players in that team that are just happy. And I can tell you that nicking a living playing for Arsenal Football Club. 6 of them ain't good enough to play for Arsenal Football Club, you know. Now, the next game now, you've got a massive decision. Right. I don't want to see everybody going on about Holding. I don't want to hear about Holding anymore, because I can tell you this: if I was a coach, and I mean a top class coach, and not like knows what he's doing, right? I could sit there and go, do you know what? Okay, one mistake against Sterling, I can accept it. He's 5'6", I can accept it. You got done on the 6-yard box once, not to have it done twice. That ain't acceptable at the top level. It's not acceptable at semi-pro level, right? You know what I mean? So I don't expect to see him ever again in an Arsenal shirt, because he cannot defend properly. He cannot defend his box against 5'5" players. There's no way that Jota should get that header in that game. No way. But he does. But the lacklustre performance, the way we went out against West Ham, right, and the way we went out against yesterday, did we do that against Tottenham? Did we, Eckers, like? Because we was mentally on it. So I blame the players, but you've also got to blame the manager for allowing it to happen. And I'll tell you why he allows it to happen. The reason he allows it to happen, because of his captain continues to play bad, but he continues to get picked. And there lies your problem. Drop him. Don't use an excuse because he's late. Oh, that's a great excuse to drop him and get him out of the team. Like, yeah. The next game he come back against Olympiacos, it was the elephant in the room, because he did not perform in that game. It then come to the game against West Ham and he played him again. And he played him again yesterday. Saturday. Not good enough. Drop him. He is a great player. I'm not saying he's not, but he is not playing well. He is not doing what he wants, what the manager wants. You've got a kid sitting on the bench that's getting 15 minutes. And by the way, I don't care what anybody says. Flip-flop, call me whatever you want. We're getting outclassed, outplayed for the whole game. He comes on when we're 3-0 down. I'm sorry, not having it. In the rant.
It's and a perfect rant. I think even me, that sat here and defended him, you echo everything. You echo everything that I was thinking in my own head.
Do you know what shocked me? One thing, sorry, Graham. The one thing that shocked me about all of that, Judge, was that you tuck yourself in, man, and there's not someone else to tuck you in. That really upset me. I felt that.
That's all right. Don't worry, like, you know. It was a late night, you know. So,
Judge, there's one thing there, mate, because I like Harry, I was imagining you tucking yourself in there. But you haven't got a channel yet. You haven't got a channel you're starting up by any chance. Have you heard that, Rent?
Well, I might do. Like, you know,
no, he's
subscribe.
Yeah, he's doing a Mercer Ozil. He's playing well on this to get. Yeah,
he's starting a channel.
Yeah, he's doing a Mercer Ozil. He's playing a good game on this one, so everyone will go over to his channel.
Looking for a big transfer fee.
Dan,
you can't. The things, the facts are there. Look, listen, guys. All jokes aside, I'm fed up. I'm fed up with a manager coming out, and I've got nothing against Mikel Arteta. I tell you, like, and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry about that." I keep saying it's sorry, like, you know what I mean. If I tell you what, and I say this now. If I was paying for those games at this moment in time, I want more than a sorry. I want my money back for a start, because it's not been good enough. It's not been good enough. And, you know, Mikel's got to start doing his things, he's got to take responsibility. I'm not saying that he should be sacked at this moment in time, but how many more performances, how many more of these lacklustre performances are we going to see before the fan base turns around and says, do you know what? That ain't right. Because I can tell you that now, the fan base got on Emery's back very, very vocally, and Arsene Wenger's. The difference is with Arteta to these guys, and I don't care if it's about process on that, stick that up your jacksie, is because the fans ain't in the stadium.
Yeah, exactly. There's no vocalism about it because we're not there. Yeah. You know, you got going back to the old days when the banners came out and there was, you know, there was animosity in the crowd between the people who wanted him in and wanted him out. There is none of that. And Graham touched on that earlier. He's very lucky. that there is no fans in the ground. Dan, I want to come back to you, and I want to say something that I read earlier on, written by someone, that Mikel Arteta is turning into a new age Arsene Wenger, with his stubborn, in the way that he is so stubborn, like Lee says, about playing players that are not performing. Why is he doing that? What is he afraid? Obviously, he's come in and he's look, the one thing that I take from his first interview that I still can't process, when he said that it's non-negotiable. Right, when he said that, I was like, oh yes, at last, someone who's going to come in, and if you're not good enough, I want to go around to everyone on this, if you're not good enough or you're not putting 100% in, you get dropped. He's not doing that, Dan. He's not helping himself, is he? I mean, Lee is right. Drop Aubameyang, bring in Martinelli, drop someone. You know, our league is gone. It's gone. Some of me thinks that he's doing this on purpose to see who he keeps and who he's not, like a trial thing or something.
It's mismanagement of players, and he's been doing it all season. And it's only now that people are starting to get frustrated with it. He did it with what he's done with Aubameyang. Lee's absolutely spot on. He did it with Willian. Aubameyang will have 3 or 4 more games until he gets bombed out, because that's what happened with Willian. He was getting every game. Why is he playing him again? Why is he playing him again? And he got bombed out. Pepe then comes in, plays on the left, plays pretty well. 3 weeks out again. Now he's coming back on the right. Pepe's got to try and settle into this team, playing behind 3 different right backs. He doesn't know whether he wants to play Bellerin, Cedric, Chambers now getting into the mix, Maitland-Niles. How many right backs have we had? Jesus Christ. Maitland-Niles has now been bombed out on loan. He was another player that was mismanaged. Saliba's been mismanaged. Pepe's been mismanaged. I think Ceballos in certain games has been mismanaged. There's so many of them. He's doing it with Aubameyang. And I don't know if it's because he's friends or closer to them. I don't know if it's got anything to do with the fact that he played with some of the people before, like the El Nenis and Bellerins. I don't know. That's just a rumour of mine that I have. But the Martinelli situation and the Saka situation and the Smith-Rowe situation needs to be sorted, because when those 3 came in against Chelsea, in my opinion, that saved him his job. That game on Boxing Day saved him his job, because if he would have lost to Brighton and Chelsea, which Saka, Smith-Rowe and Martinelli saved him, by the way, then he would have been in serious hot water, because the amount of bad results we were getting towards before the festive period. And I look at the situation with Saka and Smith-Rowe that Gary Neville brought up today. In the 10 games that Saka and Smith-Rowe have played together, everybody goes on about a form table, that we'd be top 4 if the league kicked off in January. Our form table would be right in the top 4 because of those 2 players. When them 2 players play, in the 10 games, we get an average of 2 points and an average of 2 goals. When they don't play, it's relegation form. 0.9 points, 0.9 goals.
I saw that on Sky Sports.
Those individuals, so those individuals have to play. And the last thing I was saying, touching on what Lee's come on, is he said, talking about how good he is in front of the press. I don't think he is. I don't think he is at all. He's a journalist dream. Then it's his fault. The Lacazette, like you, Craig, a couple of weeks ago, Lacazette comes out and says, we weren't doing what the manager was asking. The manager comes out and says, no, don't blame the players. It's totally my fault. I was asking him to do too much. What the hell is going on at this football club? He said before the game, handbrake will be off in this game. Handbrake will be off.
But he didn't say I was asking him to do too much. He said it's my responsibility, which the result is ultimately the manager's responsibility. What do you want him to do? Go and do a Jose Mourinho and throw everybody under the bus and lose?
Yeah, if they deserve it.
No. Hold on. He did that. He did that with Nicolas Pepe, right? And I remember you saying it, Dan. You were saying
there was nothing wrong with it.
You said, we treated Granit Xhaka differently.
That was the problem. That was what was different.
Hold on.
That was what was different.
For me,
consistently do it. Nothing wrong with throwing players under the bus.
Don't buy into what every word that he says to the press, right? It's all calculated. It's a Premier League manager at that standard. Their responses are calculated. They're not talking honestly and openly. They know exactly what's going to be written off the back of it. So why are we reading into that?
The handbrake's going to be off. Why has he said the handbrake will be off in this game? Was that with the handbrake off? Jesus Christ! I saw the handbrake very firmly on.
Doesn't that back my point up earlier then when I said that his intention was not for us to play like that?
Something's gone wrong at half time then, hasn't it? Because if he comes in at half time and says, that's not handbrakes off, boys, this is what we need to do to change it. I'm going to take you and you off because you clearly aren't listening to me and do something about it. No, It was exactly the same in the second half, if not worse. So the manager's got to take some blame for this, Harry. I know that you like him and you think he's great, but
I
he
never
was
said he
awful
doesn't.
on Saturday.
I never said for a second that he doesn't need to take any blame for this game. I never said that.
Who's to blame for it then?
Any
All the
point.
players ahead of Arteta.
I'm saying to you, my initial point, which is what I just referred back to, was that Mikel Arteta's intention when he set that team up was not for Arsenal to be as passive as they were. The fact is they got dominated by a better side. They didn't apply what they were supposed to apply. And yes, he's to blame to a degree, but why is it sort of 75% Arteta's fault and 25%?
What did he do about it then? What did he do about it to change it?
So this goes back to the question I asked you earlier, what you would have changed tactically. Graham told me what he would have changed tactically. You told me you'd have got fight out of the players. You're relying on those players taking in what you are saying. Right, so what subs would you have made that would have changed the game?
I wouldn't have had Aubameyang anyway, because I would have had Martin.
Dan, just say two things, right? The thing is, if we're saying then that players have to be changed after a bad performance, he's going to be playing a completely new 11 next game, isn't he?
That's he already is.
But 2 minutes ago, we're rotating the team too much. That's my point.
The thing is, you can't. I think we have to accept that we can't. You can't keep changing when players put in bad performances. If you're going to bomb them out straight away, you can't keep just changing players after every bad performance. That's one thing. Because what we say we want here, we want consistency of selection. So if he identifies his best team and certain players are not performing...
Can I just come in there, Graham?
Yeah.
Manchester City have changed the starting 11 46 times this year.
Yeah, but Man City are a different animal, isn't it? They're basically that they've got.
I'm just talking about rotation. 46 times.
I agree with Graham. You don't change.
I'll just finish this point off, and then Lee can come in.
Yeah, go on.
Listen, I think the thing is you can't change players after every bad performance. That's one thing, because we want consistency in selection. We want him to decide what's his best 11 and pick those players if they're fit, right? If they're not delivering on the pitch, you can't just change them every game. Now, referring to Aubameyang, Lee went on about Aubameyang. The only reason why Arteta's in a job at the moment is because of Aubameyang. He's got tremendous loyalty for Aubameyang because Aubameyang won in the FA Cup last year. So Arteta would not. Arteta's got a bit in the bank as well because he won the FA Cup. If he hadn't won the FA Cup, we'd be debating this totally differently now. And if Aubameyang hadn't done what he had done at Arsenal for the last 2 years and won us the FA Cup, maybe we'd be justified in saying those things about Aubameyang. I think that the problem we've got here is we've got a group of players, and Lee's right, they are just simply not good enough. And we've got owners who are not willing to do anything about it. And that's the problem. So we're going to be stuck with it. It's imperative he wins that Europa League, gets back in the Champions League. Because if he does that, we will get more of a cash injection. And maybe then he can go out and spend some money on a decent player. But who's going to want to come to Arsenal at the moment, the way we're playing? But in terms of changing players, if he's going to be changing players after every bad performance or after 1 or 2 bad performances, Lee mentioned Aubameyang's had 2 or 3 shockers. I think there's reasons for that because the way he's played him at West Ham on the right-hand side, he never plays well on the right-hand side. Then he moved him to the left. I think the thing is, if you're going to keep changing players, you're not going to get it's just not going to work.
Right.
And
that's what he's doing, though, Graham. He's already doing it.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
He's already changing
saying.
players loads and loads.
So with Aubameyang, right? He's shoehorning him in the team, Graham. There's a difference between playing him and shoehorning. You play him up front or not at all. That's as simple as that.
That's a choice between Aubameyang and Lacazette. He's got
That's it. That's it. And simple thing is, right, and you say about loyalty, well, he weren't loyal to him against Tottenham, was he? He was ruthless with him.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't ruthless with him, was he? He was not ruthless with him. If he turned up late, he should not have been on the bench.
Exactly. But
he wasn't ruthless.
But he was ruthless to a certain degree. Lacazette came in, and let's be honest with it, Graham, was outstanding that game, right? Yeah. So then it was the Europa League game, which basically we was through in. He should have kept Aubameyang out of that team that day, and played other players, and then brought him back for the West. But because he had such a poor game, he could not leave Lacazette out of that last game. Now Lacazette has had a poor game on Saturday. We all agree with that. So I think now about if it comes to loyalty, as you say, Aubameyang will play down the middle on Thursday night, because loyalty is that you're right. Aubameyang saved him his job. Now at the end of it, I don't care how well Lacazette has done. I care now what he's done. It is a straight shootout between them two. Who plays in that pivotal role? And if you want it to be Lacazette, it's Lacazette. If you want it to be Aubameyang, I don't see him saying, all right, let's get Lacazette and put him out wide. I've actually seen him put Lacazette into a number 10 role to cater for it this season. That is not good enough.
Judge, I think the way to look at it is if we're playing counter-attack, Aubameyang plays central. If we're playing with 3 number 8s behind a striker and we want build-up play, you play Lacazette. You've got your choices there.
Yeah.
So whatever he went with on Saturday, if we were going to sit back and play counter-attack, and I take Harry's point, we were dominated. They played around our press very easily and they dominated us. You are right. We only had 2 in midfield, 1 who was structurally poor. But he should have rectified that. He can make changes during the game. He can move people into position.
Great. And the other thing is about how you change it. How do you stop a team dominating you? Right? There's one, right. You put yourself about, you win the ball back. Once you've won the ball back, if you're passing it and they're winning it back straight away, what do you need? What do you need? You need a ball carrier. Someone's going to get the ball and go past the press. And that means go past someone, and then the press stops, because you've gone past that play. We have Aubameyang, hasn't got that in his locker. Hasn't got that on his locker. For Pepe, for whatever reason, is just not doing it on that right-hand side. When does he go?
I think Martinelli could have been someone who could have done that.
Exactly. So, you look at but there's a reluctance to pay him. I watch other teams. I watch Man City. Let's get this. Another fella. Got to get this fact in. 12 games we've lost in the poorest league I've seen for a very, very long time. There's one decent team in this league. One decent team. I watched Newcastle, who fall from bottom, totally dominate Spurs yesterday. By the way, in front of all my family of Spurs fans, it was fantastic. But anyway, that's another story. But what I'm saying is, what you've got to do. I look at Man City and I think, right, what do they have? You know what I mean? There are times, and I'm going to go on to the Leicester game here. Do you know Leicester, who are a good footballing side, give up all possession in that game on Saturday? It's a ridiculous thing to do, but no one's having to go at Rodgers for it, because at the end of the day, they're doing quite well. But that's a ridiculous thing to do, give up all possession, give up what you've got to do. You've got to be a little bit brave. And you have a look at Manchester City, they've got players that get on the ball, and they will got players that can pass, but they've also got runners. They've also got players that will be prepared to beat players. Foden, Sterling, they're prepared to do that. Arsenal haven't got those players. Now that is it all there. We was totally dominated against West Ham. We was then, West Ham are a good side. Learn your lessons from it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When it mattered, and I do think that West Ham dropped a little bit, but there were certain things that we got in there. And in the game against West Ham, what was the fundamental changing thing in that game was that Odegaard got on the ball and took the game by the scruff of the neck and dictated, going past players, putting it up in little pockets and all that. We didn't have none of that yesterday on Saturday. None of it whatsoever. And there's your problem. And wherever you want to look at it, I think me and Dan was saying on the other day is that when it comes to a substitution for the game on Saturday, this is the difference between Liverpool and Arsenal. They brought on Jota and we brought on El Neni. What we should have done was brought on Martinelli and said, right, we're going to go for it as well. What it indicated, Graham, was that we're inferior to this team. We're inferior. We fear this team. Right, and that sets up players. I'm sorry, it sets up play. If you go into a dressing room, I've been in dressing rooms, and you go, right, today we're going to play 5 at the back. We're going to do this and going to do that. Basically, what you're telling that group of players is that you're not good enough to compete with this team.
But maybe he did. So, talking about that, I agree with you that we should have been braver, and I agree with you about Leicester as well. I covered that game, and I thought they were just. It was a ticking time bomb. It was just a matter of time before City scored. But maybe in a situation where you've got your number one centre half and your most important central midfielder to provide you with that structural stability, you would take that risk, or you'd be more open to taking that risk. The introduction of El Neni was like putting a plaster over a cut. Danny Ceballos was the cut, and Mikel Arteta's thinking there would have been, this is not working. He's not staying in the right position. As Graham said earlier on, and it's a phrase I've used a lot in the last few days, Sabas is not press resistant. He wants to touch the ball 3 or 4 times before he moves it on, and you can't do that in that position. And maybe with the right foundation, he might have been a little bit braver. But all of those things you guys have been saying are absolutely right. But you're basically highlighting all the limitations that this squad has.
Exactly.
And then asking the question, why didn't Mikel Arteta do something else? Well, you've answered the question, because that quality of player, that different option, centre midfield is a massive issue for us. The minute you don't have Xhaka and Partey together, we're a completely different team. We've got players in different profiles. We got one that's his head's already in Madrid, and the other one who's just never going to be good enough for the Arsenal. And you look further forward, Smith Rowe is a starter, Saka is a starter, Xhaka is a starter, David Luiz is a starter. That's 4 of our most important players missing. I'm not saying it's an excuse. All I'm saying is that we can all sit here, look back at it and go, oh, he should have done this and he should have done that. But the fact is, we are inferior to Liverpool. They've had a bad season, but we are inferior to Liverpool. They've got much better players than us. They brought off the bench a top quality attacker in Diogo Jota. He came on and made the difference. We're all hyping up Gabriel Martinelli. I like the kid. I think he's got a big future ahead of him. But he's not at Diogo Jota level now, is he? So those are the differences in the two sides. They've got 2 makeshift centre halves.
Just before we move on, I'll bring this one in. Thank you very much, Raoul, for your kind donation. Arteta doesn't know his best 11 after 30 games. What gives people a feeling this is another question I wanted to bring on, Dan. I'll start with you. I'll start with you, Dan. Do you trust him to get it right? If he's back, if I said to you, okay, Dan, look, give him till the start of the season. He's going to be given X amount of pounds. And I said to you, right, give him until the first game of the season to get it right.
Get out.
And what happens then? That was a Sky News moment there. Absolutely brilliant. If I gave you... Lee missed it, though. You don't know what's going on.
No,
if I gave you... Obviously, look, I can guarantee you he's going to be given... however 100 millions, and I said to you, Dan, just give him, I'm not saying that I would do that. I'm just giving a situation so we can talk about it. Would you give him time if he spent money on the players that you thought that would make a massive improvement to this team?
So the only positive I've seen from Mikel Arteta and Edu, I'll bring Edu on this as well because he's going to be linked with signings, is that they seem to have got the signings correct in the transfer market as well as selling. So they've sold some really terrible players and they brought some really good ones in. My problem is with it is when you say, would you trust Arteta with them? I would say no, because he's proven after the 3 windows that he's had that he hasn't improved the squad with the players that he's brought in. Now, some people would say he hasn't really had the transfer windows. It's not really been fair to judge him on those 3 transfer windows, but he's brought in Pablo Mari and Cedric, who I think have improved our squad. He's brought in Ødegaard and Ryan, which I think will definitely be an improvement on what we had before. And he's obviously brought in Gabriel and Partey. He's brought in Willian Ceballos that I don't think's worked, but obviously some people think they're good players. And when we actually signed them, nobody was telling us how bad it was. The Willian one didn't really excite me, but again, it wasn't really a shambolic signing in my opinion. It's turned out to be one. But you can sign players that you think are going to be fantastic for you, and Arteta hasn't managed to, with these players that he's bought, progress us, because the league table says that we're not, and the competitions that we've gone out of, and no one's confident of us winning the Europa League. So prove that the players that he's bought in the last 3 transfer windows, it hasn't worked out in terms of a team. They might have individually improved us, but they haven't as a team improved us. So no, I wouldn't, based on what I've seen so far, because I'm not impressed with what I'm seeing on the pitch. I like what I'm seeing off of it. I think him and Edu have Arsenal's best interests at heart. They know what it's like to play for the club. And I do believe that Arteta wants to see the tenacity and the passion and desire that Saka and Smith Rowe and Martinelli has proved when they've come on the pitch. My problem with it is he's relying on 2 19-year-olds at the moment to save our season. And the other signings that he's brought in, people say he hasn't got the players. The players that he's given a contract extension to and the players that he signed are 14 of the 25 players, and he can't get them playing as a team. So I do worry, Craig. Yeah, I do.
Harry, what about you?
Come in, Craig. Just
you
come
can?
in. Yeah, just going to say that Gary Neville interview, I think that he seemed to be saying there seems to be a disconnect between the players and Mikel Arteta. That's what I took out of it. So we're debating here about the players, about the manager, and I think there's the first signs of a few cracks appearing there. So and
Harry,
that's what Gary Neville seemed to be saying. Now, whatever we say about Saturday night, and Harry touched on it earlier, the front four were pressing, right? Why weren't he should have been pushing the team up the pitch. He should have had his midfield players higher up the pitch. We should have been pressing as a team. Now, that's the only way to stop Liverpool playing out. But we didn't do it. So is that some of the players no longer want to do it? Is it because Arteta's not seeing it and saying to them to do it? Because the only way we were going to sort of get back into that game was to push Liverpool back, because we were never going to hang out for the whole 90 minutes playing that way. A bit like Leicester were never going to hang out against Man City. But I think what we'll see this week is that Thursday game now against Slavia Prague is absolutely pivotal. You will see now whether the players are backing the manager. You will see now whether whether there is a connection between the players and the manager still, whether they still believe in him. Because ultimately, we saw what happened with Unai Emery. Slowly but surely, the wheels fell off and the players stopped believing. And then it just went totally tits up. And I think a lot's going to be, I think that game on Thursday is going to tell us a lot, Craig.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Harry, I'll let you come back to that, mate.
Yeah, in terms of what Graham was just saying there about the connection, I don't see that as a major problem. I think that it's classic TV punditry. Let's make something to talk about when actually there probably isn't really a thing there. But if we are talking about a bit of a disconnect between some of the players and the manager, because let's be honest, it's not all of them. If we're talking about some of them having a disconnect, a lot of them are the ones that played at the weekend. So maybe there is some truth in it in terms of that game in isolation. Rob Holding did okay at right centre back for a period of time, got dropped out when David Luiz came back, hasn't had a look in since. Nicolas Pepe can't get a run in the team. He's another one. Lacazette is in and out of the side under Mikel Arteta. In the midfield, Dani Ceballos is another one who, when everybody's fit, doesn't get a look in. The point here for me is that as a starting 11, where Mikel Arteta has everybody fit, he's got closer to having a preferred 11. There's been 2 or 3 players that have been on rotation, but the centre midfield's been the same. The centre backs have been the same when possible. And, the number 10 has been the same and whatever. So I think that for me, you're just seeing a classic case of we don't have any strength in depth. In terms of numbers, we do. You look at the size of the squad and you say, yeah, we've got 2 left wingers, we've got 2 right wingers, etc., etc. But Pepe and Ceballos and Holding and all these guys, first of all, they probably are a bit disconnected with the boss because they're not getting regular game time. And second of all, they're just not capable of performing consistently. And when they get their opportunities, they're not taking them. Craig mentioned the point earlier that Manchester City have changed the lineup however many times. That highlights to me what this season has been all about. And that is a strange season whereby changes have been necessary. The difference is they've got players they can rely on to come in and do jobs, and we don't. I don't really buy into the Gary Neville thing. I think naturally with every manager, there will be players that are more on board with him and there will be players that aren't as on board with him. And naturally, it's going to be those players that aren't playing every single week. And unfortunately, on Saturday, we had too many of those players in our starting 11 because it was forced upon us.
Lads, unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop because of time constraints. But I just want to say what a fantastic group of football supporters you are, especially the 4 of you there now. I mean, don't keep me out of the fray. I know nothing about football. I just ask the questions. You 4 are unbelievable at what you're doing on these, and it's an absolute pleasure to come on here every week and listen to you all talk about our club and the way you don't argue, the way you don't shout over people, the way it's all backed up. It's absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure everyone in the chat and everyone watches it will agree. So thank you, lads. You are the ones that make this show as good as it is. Lee, just before we came on, we all gave obviously a little tribute to Claude, who unfortunately passed away last week. I would have loved you to have been there when we were doing it, but you're here now. So I'd like to give you the opportunity just to say a few words about Claude, like we all did.
Yeah, it's been a tough week for me, really. It's an absolute. It's been a tough week because you know, like the reason that I started doing all this and watching AFTV, if I'll be honest, was Chris Hudson, who was in the chat. He was the first one that, you know, his interview will always be the one that sort of got me into AFTV, got a lot of people into it. But Claude brought it on, and he made the show what it was, you know. And I always, you know, like what he'd done, and then to meet him was always a pleasure. But then for him to become a friend was fantastic, and we did have a great friendship. Unfortunately, things went sour towards the end. What happened with AFTV, but and me and Claude, I'm not gonna lie, me and Claude fell out for a little while over it because Claude felt that I didn't advise him and back him the way that I should have. But as a friend, I felt that it was my duty to tell him what I thought about it all. And you know, that's what friends do. Sometimes you don't like what you want to hear. And we didn't speak for a few weeks. And you know, unfortunately, my dad died. And one of the first people to phone up was Claude. And we started talking again. Of course, like, you know, and this is where I think it's very, very important for anybody out there listening. Yeah, we'll meet up when the season starts again and have a few beers. And you know, life's too short and you just don't know what's going to happen, and that's never going to happen again because you just sort of took it for granted that it would. And you know, I genuinely funny man to be around, great company to be around. Could be a miserable old sod at times, but ultimately he was a really funny, genuine sort of person. And I'm going to have to say this, guys, that he wasn't that comfortable with all the things that go around what you get. You know, we'd be out, people would ask for photos and things like that. He felt very uncomfortable about having photos and things like that, you know, and the social media side of it all, like, you know. And I think people took advantage of his mental health by having a go at him on Twitter and things like that because they knew that he'd get a reaction. And I find that very, very sad. And I'm going to say it now, like the love for Claude after his death, has been nothing but sensational, absolutely sensational. Like, you know, the love and everything like that. And it's just a shame that he didn't realise how loved and well thought of he was while he was alive. And I think that can happen so many times in life as well, you know. So I think that if you're falling out with somebody or you know, haven't spoken to someone for a little while, you know, make that call, make that effort, and because life is short. And unfortunately, you know, for me, I've lost a real friend, and it's impacted on me this week. I can tell you now, it's going to impact me a lot more when I go back to games and we're having a drink in the pub, and he's not going to be there. And you know, I'll go on. Let's just have one. I'll just have one more. And I said I'll have half, and that's where the half pint come from. You know what I mean? And as Dan showed me a video the other day, he sent me a video saying, "Oh, what's half pint got to say now?" Like, you know, and I use it as an endearing thought that's what he called me, half pint. And you know, I just feel that he's going to be sadly missed, not just by me, by everybody, because he was a character, massive Arsenal fan, whether you agreed with his things or not. And this is what really does wind me up. Yes, I didn't agree with him all the time. I didn't agree with what he was and some of the things he said. You know, he used to call me a flip-flop and everything like that. But I've got my opinions and he had his. At the end of the day, it's football opinions. And do you know what? He's not wrong and I'm not wrong. I'm not right. It's his opinion. And I don't think, you know, I think if you, from now on, I just please hope that everybody learns from this, that if you have an opinion, why slag it off? Why be nasty to people about it? Like, you know, and that's how I feel about it, you know. And to me, it's very, very upsetting that the abuse at times that Claude got because of an opinion. And, you know, it's very, very sad. But I loved him. The voice of reason. I sometimes called him the voice of treason. But I tell you what, like, you know, that's how we was. And you know, I'm going to be. I'm always going to be always in my thoughts. And do you know what the greatest thing? And the greatest thing I take, and I know that Dan will say this as well, because we've said about it, is that I don't care about AFTV. I don't care that he was on telly. I'm just glad I met the man and shared time with him as Claude. and I knew the real Claude, and he was a funny guy, and I loved him. I loved being around him, and I'm going to miss him.
Thank you very much, mate. Very poignant tribute there to Claude, and of course, condolences to his friends and all his family as well. In this very sad time. Dan, thank you very much for coming along this evening, mate. It's been honestly, I just want to echo. It's just so. A lot of people say to me that this is a therapy session every Monday when they watch us. I think it's a therapy session for us as well. We're 5 normal fans who like to come on YouTube and talk about our club. We're not fans who will create what's the word I'm looking for? We're not coming on here to be negative to create something, if that makes sense. We're not. It's rational. Everything is rational from every single one of you, and it's an absolute testament to you all. So thanks for coming along, mate. Tomorrow we're starting a new podcast on Tuesday night. We are teaming up with the boys from the Total Screamers. Me and Dan will be live here tomorrow at 7:00 with Simo and Jake from the Total Screamers, and we're going to be talking about everything that happened in the Premier League over the weekend. It's going to be a very relaxed podcast, hopefully a funny podcast. I've got my joke book out, and I'm ringing the jokes that I can use in a football podcast, because I'm not that funny, really. I need to get material. So, Dan, thanks for coming on tonight, and can't wait for tomorrow.
No, I look forward to it, and thank you, boys, and thank you to everyone this week, because obviously, me and Lee were close to Claude, Lee a lot closer than me, but everyone's dropped me lines on Twitter and WhatsApp, and I've got to say thank you to you four as well. You've been great. Dropping a line, making sure we're all okay, because obviously it's very sad when this happens. I've got a shout out to Kenny Ken. He's been messaging me every day, and he's absolutely devastated, as well as other people. And I know people don't get on with him on this channel in the chat, but Lee Gunner's been absolutely brilliant messaging. He's obviously absolutely gutted and was very, very close. So I just wanted to shout out to those two, because they've been really, really good with me every single day, messaging how I am. It just proves they've both got a proper heart, proper fans, and it's really affected them as well.
Yeah. This
is
not a time. So. You're welcome, mate. This is not a time to be going at anyone, whether you don't like them or not. This is not the time to be hounding people with this, that, and the other. Whether you like them or not, they've lost their mate, and people need to be respectful of that. Because and don't, because of their character or because of your personal opinion towards a person, that's just being a scumbag. In my opinion, going at someone after they've just lost a mate. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Kenny Ken, Lee Gunner. My thoughts go out to you all, because they're right in what they say. They were there for him, and more than others. If you want, to be respectful. And yeah, so Kenny and Lee, my heart goes out to you too. So I hope you're doing well. And I hope things will get easier for you all in the near future. Harry, thank you very much for coming on again, mate. I totally appreciate it. You doing anything after this one?
No, I'm not, but I'm going to be away for a few weeks now. I've just got Monday night football coverage coming over the next few weeks. So unfortunately, I won't be able to podcast with you guys. Yes.
That's all right, mate. So you're commentating, aren't you?
Yeah, out in the United States for VSIN in the United States. So they're part of DraftKings now, if you've heard of DraftKings. They've just taken them over. So, yeah, it's going really well and looking forward to it. But obviously, it's a shame it's clashing for the next couple of weeks.
Well, fair play to you, mate. We've been massive supporters of you, and we wouldn't want to stop you from doing anything. I'm just
scared. I'm scared that Dan's going to turn all the fans by the time I come back.
You won't be missed, Harry. You won't be missed, mate. You won't be missed. No, I'm joking. Can I just say, Craig, as well, massive congratulations to Harry as well. And his missus obviously having another little one.
Yes, absolutely. Congratulations, mate. Congratulations indeed.
If it's a boy,
he was busy all the time.
Well, this is it.
This is what he's been busy doing in the pandemic.
That's what he's been busy doing. Is that what they call it now? Podcasting? I thought it was something else.
Judge, it doesn't take long, mate.
Nice,
Harry,
always.
You're not being tucked up on your own on a Saturday night.
always nice to know there's lead in the pencil. Graham, thank you very much, mate. It's been a pleasure having you back. Love having you back. We really did miss you. So great to be back, and thank you very much for coming along this evening.
Yeah, it's always a privilege to debate Arsenal with you guys. Massive respect for you. You talked about therapy there. And I'm going to need therapy now because I find myself agreeing with Harry so much tonight. I think I'm going to need therapy. Look, I'll just leave you with this. And I was really touched by the thing that Lee said about Claude. I think Lee's tribute to Claude was very moving for me because I love Claude a lot. And Claude, we all know now, died of natural causes, right? But he was hounded a lot on social media. And I just want to say this one message tonight, and that is, and this is not just for Claude, it's for everybody. Claude, rest in peace. I think in life is very fragile, life is very short, and you should be kind to everybody in life because you never know what battles that they're fighting inside. So that's my closing remark tonight, and it's been a real privilege as ever to be on this podcast. It's a great podcast what you do, Craig. You do it really well, and these guys know so much about the club, and I love debating it with them. It's been a great debate tonight, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, mate. Nothing to do with me. It's all on you. I just sit here and try and look pretty. I used to be pretty when I had hair, but anyway. Judges, thank you very much, mate. Even though you were 50 minutes late.
Come on earlier.
No, that's all right, mate.
As my late dad said, if you haven't got nothing nice to say nothing at all.
Absolutely, mate. And on that note, we will be back tomorrow for the same Old Screamers podcast, episode 1. We will be doing the 4 Men and a Mic on Thursday, and we'll have a team talk, Dan, on Friday.
We will do. We'll have one on Friday night. Just to close off, if it's a boy, you're going to call it Granite.
Take care of yourselves and each other, and up the Arsenal.